Right, we're into part 5 of Brothers Karamazov, entitled Pros and Cons. We're doing alright, aren't we? So, chapter 1 is entitled Betrothal. Alyosha rocks up at the ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤𝕤𝕤, and we learn that Katerina Ivanovna is unconscious. She got in trouble and ended up fainting. She's in a state of agitation. And then we learn that Lise dreamed that she repined under a pine tree. I'm not sure what repine means. I meant to look it up in the other book and I forgot. Is it ℙ𝕤𝕤𝕤𝕤? So we learn that Lise regrets having been mean to Alyosha. So remember, she wrote him a love letter, then she's angry at him and asks for the love letter back and says that it wasn't serious. And now she's saying that it was serious and she did mean it. And Alyosha goes on to explain to her what happened at the staff captain's with the rejection of the 200 rubles, but he says it's all right. He said it had to go down that way because it means that the staff captain will go home and he'll sleep on it and he'll realise that he does need the money, and he's already shown his pride that he's an honourable man. So there won't be any dishonour in accepting the money tomorrow. Not only that, but he doesn't know that Alyosha is going to go round the next day to offer the money again. So he's certainly honourable in that regard. And had it gone the other way, had he taken the money, according to Alyosha, he would then have gone home with the money, regretted taking it, and then he would have come back the next day and thrown it down, and then he wouldn't have got the money at all. So it's all worked out for the best. And Lise is impressed with Alyosha's empathy, wisdom, and she asks if there's any condescension in this situation, to which Alyosha says no. What condescension can there be when we ourselves are like him, when everyone's like him? Because after all, we're all like him. We are no better. So, yeah, interesting. And then they have a chat about their futures. Lise, of course, professes her love, and Alyosha kisses her. And she's like, "What are you doing kissing me? That's a bit presumptuous." And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Couldn't help myself." And then she's like, "I can tell something's wrong. Do you have a secret grief?" He says, "Yeah. My brothers are destroying themselves. My father's destroying himself. It's not good." And Lise confesses that she doesn't like Ivan, for whatever that's worth. And Alyosha goes on to say that it's a kind of elemental force in the Karamazovs, as Father Paisi put it. So there's something there that's causing these Karamazovs to fight and to destroy themselves. And of course Alyosha is a Karamazov. And they get talking about Alyosha's role as a monk, and he says, "I am a monk. You called me a monk." And he goes on to say, "And yet, perhaps, I don't even believe in God." Like, what? So that caught me by surprise. Wonder what that's all about. So Alyosha leaves, and as he's leaving, Mrs. ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤𝕤 catches him. So she's clearly been eavesdropping, which is something that Lise and Alyosha discuss. The fact that it's all right for a mother to eavesdrop on a daughter, and that when Lise is a mother, she'll do the same. And she'll read all Alyosha's letters. And he's like, "Well, that's not very good." And then she goes, okay, I won't do that. But we know she will. So Mrs. Chochlakova's been listening in, and she catches Alyosha just as he's leaving, and she's like, I hope you were just stringing her along there. And he says, actually, no, I wasn't. But don't worry, we've got a year and a half before a wedding can take place, so it's fine. And she's like, what's the deal with this letter? Let me see it. Alyosha's like, no, I'm not showing you the letter. And she says, you hold it up, I'll read it, you can keep a hold of it. He says, no. I'm not letting you see the letter, but I have to go now. I'll come back tomorrow and we can chat more then. That's where we leave the chapter. So, will he come back tomorrow? I don't think he's going to read the letter or let her read it. And what's going on at the monastery? Alyosha said he's going to be leaving the monastery very soon. Is that his intention? We shall see. Right, part 5, chapter 2, Smerdyakov with a guitar. So Alyosha leaves the Chochlakovas, and he has a sudden urge to go and see Dmitri. So he heads to the house, climbs over the fence, goes into the summer house, and overhears guitar chords. So as a guitar player, I'm stoked to hear that. And he hears singing at Smerdyakov. And then he hears a conversation. And Smerdyakov is talking to Maria Kondratyevna, who's the daughter of the owner of the house. And they're discussing poetry. Smerdyakov says poetry's rubbish. He also says poetry's irrelevant. And then he says, is a Russian peasant worthy of holding a candle to an educated person? So he's the Russian peasant, and he's talking, of course, about the Karamazov brothers, who are the educated people. And he has a bit of a resentment against them. So he goes on to say that Dmitri is worse than any lackey in his behaviour, his way of thinking, and his poverty. He's a good for nothing, but that doesn't stop him being respected by everyone. And then he says he's so honourable he could offer out a nobleman for a jewel. So I suppose a peasant couldn't do that. And Maria Kondratyevna's like, oh, a jewel, how romantic. I'm like, shut up. So from the way he's talking, it got me wondering whether, because we know there's a murder coming up, right? That's not a surprise, it's not a spoiler. Could it be Smerdyakov as the murderer? That's what I'm thinking. I should know, because I've read the book, but it was over 30 years ago, so I don't remember. And then there's a retranslation bit here that was interesting. Smerdyakov's talking about his mother, so he's well known for being the son of, what was her name? Smerdyashaya, the village idiot kind of thing. And he said that they say in the market, and your mother as well, Maria Kondratyevna, says of my mother that she was scarcely 2 arshins and a bit. Why a bit? Why not say just over, like everyone else does? So that's from this translation here, which is my primary one by Ignat Avsey. So I looked up McDuff, which is a much nicer copy actually. I love the pages in this Clothbound Classic. And it says, not but 2 arshins. Why did it have to be not but, when she could have said no but, the way everybody else does? Beviren Volokonsky, this one here. A wee bit under 5 feet tall. Why say a wee bit, when you can simply say a little, like everyone else? So, they're the only translators to use imperial measurements that we know, that we understand. The other 2 used arshins, which is an archaic Russian measurement. So I looked up the Russian. If you know Russian, this might be of interest to you. Certainly was to me. Rosta była всего 2 аршин с малыми. Для чего же с малыми, когда просто с малым сказать, как все люди произносят? So, yeah, малый means small, and it's basically using the instrumental case here in the plural versus the singular. So I suppose one must be colloquial and one less so. I don't know. If Dana's watching, let me know please, because Dana is leading this read along on her Substack and is also a native Russian speaker. And if Dana's not seeing this, but you are and you're a native Russian speaker, let me know in the comments below what the difference is between smalimi and smalim, with the plural and the singular, because I'm very interested to know more. So at this point Alyosha sneezes and his presence is revealed. So he presents himself to the two, and it is of course Smerdyakov and Maria Kondratyevna, and he says, "Hello, I'm sorry for sneaking in over the fence. It seemed the most, was the quickest and easiest way to get in, because the gate was locked." And Maria Kondratyevna's pleased at the apology, and she says, "Don't worry about it. Dmitri sometimes comes in that way as well and sits in the summer house." So now we know that if the murder is going to take place in the summer house, that Dmitri often climbs the fence, so he's not seen by anyone getting into the summer house. And then Smerdyakov says that Dmitri actually threatened to kill him if he were to let Grushenka in past him to spend the night with Fyodor Pavlovich. So remember, this is Dmitri's love as well as Fyodor Pavlovich's love. And then he says that Ivan approached him and asked him to take a message to Dmitri to arrange a secret rendezvous in a tavern. But when he got to Dmitri's, he wasn't there. And Alyosha's like, "Okay, where was the tavern? I'm going to go there because I want to meet my brothers and have a chat." So he tells him where the tavern is. Alyosha leaves, goes to the tavern, worries about going in with his cassock on. So I guess that's not allowed. ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤𝕤. You can't go in a pub wearing a monk's cassock. But it's alright. His brother sees him, looks out the window and says, "Come on up, I've got a private room." And that's where we leave it. Okay, book 5, chapter 3. The brothers get to know each other. So Alyosha's just gone to the inn to meet Ivan. You'll have to excuse the garden tool noises. The neighbour's cutting his grass. So yeah, they have a long discussion, and frankly I got lost a little bit. They professed mutual admiration for one another, and Ivan's like, "Yeah, when you were a kid I was like, I wasn't that interested in you because you were so young. But you know, as you've got older I've come to respect you and admire you." So it's great, brotherly love in that, Ken. And Alyosha says to Ivan, "Nice one. A longing to love instinctively from the depths of one's being. You put that beautifully. And I'm so happy you have such an urge to live. I think that everyone should, above all else on this earth, love life." Yeah, amen, Alyosha. Then we get Ivan talking about his love for life, how passionate he is about it, and about how he thinks when he reaches 30, maybe that's the age when he should take the goblet from his lips. So here's what he says: "Take away my belief in life, my trust in a good woman. Destroy my faith in the order of things. Convince me that, on the contrary, everything is just chaos, disordered, damned, and perhaps diabolical. I shall still want to go on living. Having put this goblet to my lips, I shall not tear them away until I have drained it. And then he goes on to say, well, maybe until I'm 30, and then I'll tear the goblet away, because you know what use is it being passionate about life after you're 30? And he talks about their father, saying, well, he's in his 70s and he still hasn't removed the goblet from his lips. It's like, what a metaphor. And then Ivan goes on to say how stoked he is at having broken off relations with Katerina Ivanovna. So you remember that went down in a previous chapter. It's like a weight lifted off his mind. And then they get on to discussing the existence of God, the existence of immortality. This is where I get a wee bit lost. He talks about Euclid, which I know nothing about, and about parallel lines not meeting on the earth but out there in the universe somewhere. This is where I need Dana to come back and start giving us some essays on Brothers Karamazov, because I'm lost. But basically Ivan explains his philosophy, which is that he believes in God, but he doesn't believe in God's creation. Interesting. He says, and I advise you too, Alyosha, my friend, never to think about such things, especially about God and whether he exists or not. These questions are most definitely unsuited to a mind created with an understanding of only 3 dimensions. So this is the Euclidean philosophy that man's mind works in only 3 dimensions, which is fair enough. I can understand the limitations of that, but I'm not sure. I don't know anything about Euclid, so I'll just take it from Ivan and we'll see. We'll see. And then he says, clarity and absurdity, because Alyosha says, why were you being so absurd when we first started our conversation? And he says there's clarity and absurdity. Absurdity is direct and guileless, whereas the intellect is evasive and elusive. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what that's about either, but I'm looking forward to learning a bit more about it. We believe that Ivan's going to go away tomorrow morning, and I don't know where or whether he will. I suppose we'll find that out too. So stick with me as we go into chapter 4, Rebellion. This is a heavy chapter. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. We carry on in a similar vein to what we were talking about in the previous chapter. So we've got Ivan and Alyosha still in the tavern. Conversation continues, and Ivan basically rants about universal truth and about religion, about God, about immortality, all these big themes that this book is really at the heart of this book, these themes. And it's leading into the next chapter, which is the Grand Inquisitor. And that, I mean, books could be written about that chapter. I'm a bit nervous about getting to it, actually. Yeah, he goes on to talk about the cruelty of man and says he's only going to talk about children because that narrows the scope of his explanation of his philosophy. So, yeah, he says, first of all, I could never understand how one could love one's neighbour. He says it's impossible to do that except from a distance. One can love a man only when he's out of sight. As soon as he shows his face, that's the end of love. It's relatable. It's something I've thought about myself, how my goal in life is to love my neighbour, to love my fellow man. Same thing. And yet, when you're out there in the world, people annoy you, don't they? Get in the way. You can't control them. And they do stuff that you disapprove of. And then you feel judgmental, which isn't a good place to be. And that leads to fear of being judged oneself, which is can cause one to not to act in a way that one would like to because of this fear of judgment. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I think he's talking about. And he says, the question is, does this result from man's evil qualities, or is it simply in his nature? I think it's in his nature. And he talks about how man has partaken of the apple in the Garden of Eden, and so he gets what's coming to him. But children, and I think he says up to the age of 7, they haven't partaken of the apple, so any cruelty that's meted upon them is of the father. The sins of the father shall be whatever the thing is on the children. So he goes through examples of cruelty to children, and it's pretty grim reading actually. It's not fun, and I don't need to go into it. You can read it yourself. I don't need to talk about these horrible things to children, to animals as well. And he goes on to say that if the devil didn't exist and if man has created him, then he has created him in his own image and likeness. Interesting, because earlier on it mentioned, in French actually, that if God didn't exist, there would be a need to invent him. And now they're saying that the devil has been created by man in his own image. And we know from the Bible that God created man in his own image. So God creates man, man creates the devil. What do you think about that? He says, of course, in every person there lurks a beast. That's a long paragraph that I won't read the whole thing, but it goes on to explain what he means. And he says that they say without it, so without this, would you call it evil? I don't know. Without this capacity for cruelty, man could not live on this earth, for he would not understand the difference between good and evil. And then we get absurdity again. Remember we talked about absurdity in the previous chapter. And Ivan says to Alyosha, you know, novice, absurdity is all too necessary on this earth. The world rests on absurdity, and without it perhaps nothing would be accomplished. And then Ivan says, if the suffering of children is required to make up the total suffering necessary to attain the truth, then I say here and now that no truth is worth such a price. So yeah, he rejects that the suffering of children is not worth it to get to the truth. It's not that I don't accept God, Alyosha, I'm just with the utmost respect handing him back my ticket. So he's out. Heavy, heavy chapter. Getting into the Grand Inquisitor, which is Ivan telling a story to Alyosha, which I imagine will be allegorical and will go into all kinds of philosophical discussion. So yeah, a bit nervous about it, but I'm looking forward to it as well, because it kind of is the essence of the book, I think. So I'll see you then. Cheers. Right, we're into the Grand Inquisitor chapter, which is so big I'm going to do a separate video on it. So for those of you watching this vlog through the whole of book 5, then I'll put I can never remember what side to do that. Whatever side it is, I'll put the video out on the same day about the Grand Inquisitor, and you can go and watch that. And then we'll jump into the next chapter. Right, last 2 chapters of book 5. Chapter 6, still very unclear. Ivan goes to his father's house and is feeling anxious. He doesn't know why he's feeling anxious, but he is. And I wondered whether it's a vulnerability hangover after the Grand Inquisitor scene. Something I know a little bit about just from stuff that I write online, you know. Sharing vulnerable moments in one's life can lead one to feel drained afterwards. That's what it made me think of. And it says someone or something was worrying him, getting in the way. Then he gets to his father's house and it becomes apparent to him that it's Smerdyakov that's been on his mind, that's been bothering him. Doesn't like him, and they have a bit of a thing, a wee conversation, a wee altercation. Smerdyakov explains his fears to Ivan and is worried about if Dmitri were to come back and, quotes, something really dreadful, end quotes, were to happen to Fyodor Pavlovich. So it feels like he's implicating Dmitri here. And we know, I know from life experience and context that there's a murder about to happen. I must say that in the synopsis of the book, so that's not really a spoiler. It feels like Smerdyakov is implicating him. And then he goes on to explain the series of signals that Fyodor Pavlovich gave him. If Grushenka arrives at the house, he's to give certain knocks, and if Dmitri arrives at the house, he's to give certain knocks. And then he tells us that he actually was intimidated by Dmitri to tell him the knocks. So now we know Dmitri knows the secret signals. So now they're kind of no longer useful. But that kind of implicates him as well, so that if something were to happen, Ivan now knows that Dmitri also knows the secret signals. And they talk about inheritance. So if Fyodor Pavlovich were to marry Grushenka, then Dmitri, Ivan and Alyosha would no longer be inheritors of his will. So that's another motive for all three brothers, actually, if you think about it. I don't think Smerdyakov he's not legitimised, so he wouldn't be an inheritor, I don't think. So yeah, that's the whole scene between Smerdyakov and Ivan, where they discuss these implications and fears. And then we get to chapter 5-7. It's always interesting to talk to an intelligent person. How's that for a chapter title? So Ivan goes in the house and ignores his father. They meet in the stairway or something, and he walks past them, goes straight to his room. And when he's sleeping, he can hear his father pacing downstairs, who's clearly waiting for Grushenka, or for signals. And he gets an overwhelming urge, Ivan, to go down and beat up Smerdyakov. He doesn't know where this urge has come from, and he doesn't act on it, but he does go out onto the stairs to listen to his father's pacing, which he goes on to say he later considered to be one of the basest acts he had ever committed. He doesn't know why. It's not really explained why. But this gets me to a wee point that this happened a lot in Crime and Punishment as well, where the narrator kind of tells us how these characters feel in the future as they look back to these times, which is an interesting device. I'm not really sure what it's supposed to mean, because in Crime and Punishment, having read it recently, the fact that the characters feel a certain way in the future about what's happening now doesn't really have a bearing on what happens in the future. So examples, we've got page 335 of the Avsey translation, for a moment, as he recalled later. And then page 345, much later, remembering this night. And that's where it goes on to say that he considered this to be the basest act he had ever committed. Well, like, why? So? And when Ivan is thinking about going to beat up Smerdyakov when he wakes up in the middle of the night with this urge, it says, perhaps he had come to hate that servant as deeply as one might hate the most detested of enemies one could possibly encounter in this world. Why? Why is he hating on Smerdyakov so much? Is he threatened by him in some way? It's not clear. And then we get a little translation point, which I found interesting. It says in the Avsey translation, when Fyodor Pavlovich is trying to persuade Ivan to go to Chermashnya on his way to the station to do a little business deal, wee side quest. And Ivan says, no, I can't. I've got to get to the station in time for the train, and if I take a detour, I won't make the train. And his father's saying to him, look, you need to go. I've got this little business deal that I need sorting out. Can't trust anyone else to do it, so you're the guy. And he says, once you get there, you'll get a note to bring back, and you'll be back. The note will come back to me before you can say Jack Robinson. It's like, what a great little translation. I wonder how the others have done that. So I looked it up, and Pavir and Volokonsky, they've got, and then off to Venice. What? Where did that come from? McDuff has just got in a flash, which is actually a really good translation of the Russian, which is the word migom, which literally means in a flash. So on mnie migom твою цидулку пришлет. He'll bring the note to me in a flash. But I do like, before you can say Jack Robinson, very colloquial, kind of thing a father might say to a son. But in 1881, I don't know if that phrase was around then. I suspect, or I hope, that Avsey has researched that and found that that was actually a term that was used in those days, because that's what a translator has to do. Right, so yeah, he heads off, Ivan, and he gets to the post station to change horses, and it's the point where the detour would begin, and he decides, nah, he's not going to bother, so he doesn't, and then he makes his train, and then feels regret. I think he's feeling bad that he did his father a disservice and didn't follow his instructions. But he says when he's at the detour point, he asks one of the taxi guys if they know his father, take a message to him and let him know I didn't go. So at least he did that. And that's us at the end of book 5. So yeah, what a book. I mean, we've got the Grand Inquisitor scene. It's possibly one of the most important chapters in the book, at least so I'm led to believe. I can't really remember the book from having read it way back in my student days. I think it was my penultimate year, so 96, 97. Yeah, it's a long time, almost 30 years ago. Don't remember much about it, and except that I didn't like it. I was kind of made to read it. I had no choice. I had to do a presentation on it, all about ℓ𝕧𝕚𝕤, and I still have that, at least my notes. So it'll be interesting to look back at them. But yeah, I don't remember the plot, so it's a good fun read, and I'm enjoying it immensely now. I think one of the highlights of this particular section would have been a fortnight ago when I sat in the library over in Ayr and read the Grand Inquisitor chapter. Well, it's going to be something I will remember. That day, that setting, that chapter, it was all just very memorable. So I suppose it's a recommendation that you get out and sit and read in different places, because it can enhance the memory of what you're reading, because you've changed your daily routine. It's a message to myself as much as it is to anyone else out there. Great moment, very memorable. So I'll probably slow down a bit on this now, because I've got my ℓ𝕦𝕤𝕤 reading going, and I've also got Anna Karenina, which is nice and slow with Henry Elliott. And also because Dana, who does the Dostoevsky book club on Substack and was leading Boris Karamazov, she's disappeared. She hasn't posted since beginning of April. And I'm a little worried, actually, because it's not like her. She was doing such a great job with posting the supplementary information about this book, and she's one of the best leaders, I think, on Substack for leading book discussions. So I hope she comes back. But because my reading is now so busy with ℓ𝕤𝕠𝕠𝕜𝕤, I think I might slow down on this a bit. And so if you don't see a video coming out for book 6 soon, don't worry. I'm still reading it. I've not disappeared. Just subscribe to the channel and you'll get it when it comes out. So cheers. Thanks. See you later.